to get more on the French elections and what the results may mean to the country's relationships with its neighbours and those further afield. Indeed, Thomas Klau, head of the Paris office at the European Council on Foreign Relations, joins us now. We can see the Eiffel Tower behind you. Thomas, that's the centre of France in a way, if you like, but spreading out. How different would François Hollande's policies be to those of Nicolas Sarkozy involving other countries?
Quite different initially, of course, because François Hollande has announced that one of the main thrusts of his policy, if he wins on May 6th, will be to try to reorient the whole framework of governance and policy for the Eurozone that has been agreed since the beginning of the crisis 2 years ago towards more growth. That would be quite a clean break with the policy that has prevailed until now, which has focused very much on austerity. Sarkozy, of course, the president today, has in a sense tried to emulate Hollande a little bit by calling for more growth too. Still, I think it will be a significant break.
There was a lot of talk about the relationship between Sarkozy and Angela Merkel. The Merkozy relationship, it was called. Was she particularly fond, or is she particularly fond of Nicolas Sarkozy, or was it just a union of convenience?
Well, it's always been very much an arranged marriage. History tells us that any German chancellor and any French president have to get along, even if the chemistry doesn't work particularly well in the early years of the relationship. And that's been very much the case for Nicolas Sarkozy and Angela Merkel. Now, of course, Nicolas Sarkozy has pointed to Germany as a model to follow in terms of reforming the welfare state and making the country more competitive. In the early stages of his campaign, lately he's changed course and adopted a far more, if you like, centre-left rhetoric in terms of criticising the European Central Bank, for instance, in his last major campaign speech for not doing enough on growth. This is something which Berlin has viewed with a degree of concern. They know, of course, that what has been said in an electoral campaign is not necessarily what will inform the policy of the new president, whoever he is. Angela Merkel has expressed a preference, clearly, for Nicolas Sarkozy, but if François Hollande gets elected, he has already announced that his first trip would be to Berlin. Angela Merkel would remain the main partner of the new French president, so no fundamental change in terms of the Franco-German dynamic remaining the pivotal one in the Eurozone today.
You couldn't see two more very different characters, could you? The unassuming, if you like, François Hollande, the pugnacious, charismatic Sarkozy. But I'm interested to get your view on why Sarkozy has proved, undoubtedly, not to be a popular man in France when he is so outgoing, so Gallic in his own way.
Well, he's perceived as being very Gallic by people outside Gaul. But in fact, the interesting thing is that the French have never really cottoned on to the way he embodies the country. There is a similarity between the French president and the US president in that they're both, at the same time, the chief executive of their country and, of course, the head of state. And that means that the population expects them, in a sense, to embody the country, almost in their physical being, and in their mannerisms, in the way they speak and smile and react. And Sarkozy has never gotten that part of the job right. The French, or a large percentage of the French, even within his own centre-right camp, have never really fully endorsed or liked the way he is France. And that's been a problem for the president, because it has made him unpopular even beyond, if you like, some of his policies, some of which have been quite successful.
But Thomas, you're almost saying, yes, he's unpopular because he's not French. But in what way is he not French?
Well, there is a regal side to the French presidency. Mélenchon, the far-left candidate, calls it rightly, I think, in some ways an elective monarchy. And Sarkozy, in the early stages of his presidency, has made a deliberate attempt to do two things. One is to break that regal mold, if you like, to modernize the presidency by, for instance, talking not in the typical way a member of the French technocratic elite would talk, but a much more popular way. The other thing he's tried to do is to break the barrier between France and money. He's tried to make getting rich popular. He's tried to look at America. He's surrounded himself at this first inaugural party with a number of very rich and self-made people. And this is something that hasn't played terribly well in France. The French want their president to be removed from the outward trappings of money, not to be flaunting expensive watches and so on. So it's been a mistake, but there is another factor, of course. If you look at what's happened politically in the Eurozone since the beginning of the crisis, you will see that in virtually all elections, the voters have sent the government packing and voted the opposition into power. And that was a way, I think, to express a dissatisfaction with the way governments collectively in the Eurozone have handled this huge financial and political crisis. And that, too, works against Nicolas Sarkozy today.
He's not aloof enough. Interesting, very interesting. Thomas Klau, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this Al Jazeera News Hour.